You know, making the simple complicated is commonplace. Making the complicated simple, awesomely simple, that takes creativity. You know, we have to be more creative about how we communicate about this stuff and how we talk about cities. We are tragically limited in our understanding of what cities really are, how we're all tied together and all this stuff. Where were we 20 years ago when we were doing the same exact problem? We were hitting ourselves in the face with a baseball bat, and now we took the bat out of our hand and we're gonna go back and put the baseball bat back in our hands again. And it's kind of, there's like a lunacy to it. So I see cities like a DNA, like I have a DNA. This is how I started my life when I was 3 months old, and here's my trajectory, right? I'm gonna be Papa whether I like it or not. There's a lot that I can't change in that. Or more importantly, I'm gonna be this guy. So I have 2 genetic issues. I'm genetically Italian. You can see that by my name and how much I wave my hands around. But I also have a genetic predisposition to heart disease. Every Minicozzi male has had a heart issue. It's not going to be a surprise to me when that comes to me. So I could just fly blind into that future, or I could deal with it, right? I could eat some salad, I could exercise, not just eat pizza every single night. So how are you doing this? Who's your grandparents? Where does Petaluma want to go when it grows up? Do you all think about this? Do you have something in mind of where you're going? Do you study and analyze the heart attacks other places have had? And how do you keep that relevant to today's decisions? You know, I may eat a piece of pizza, but I'm going to exercise the next day. So it's how do you keep that all in relative context? That's one of my lessons up front. The other is something a little bit less fun, more nerdy. Last night I asked the audience, I said, I'll ask you all, show of hands, who in this room has read your local property tax policy? One, thank you. Are you an assessor?
What's that?
Are you an assessor, a tax assessor?
No, I'm a former council member.
Oh, nice, thank you. You know, I presented at the International Smart Growth Conference in Seattle in 2009, and I had this slide up, and these are all smart growth people. Like, we want to have greenways and affordable housing and equity and all this stuff, right? We all want that. But if your tax policy undermines that, if your financial system undermines it, how is it ever going to happen? So I was asking the audience, actually, that didn't happen. I didn't have anybody raise their hand at that conference, and it was really sad. And I love this quote from Mark Twain right here: a person who won't read has no advantage over one who can't read. It's not that I like reading tax policy. I'm a damn architect. I like looking at pictures, right? So I'm going to take you down a little bit of a wormhole to look at all this stuff, but this is basically what I look at. Thirdly, has anybody ever seen Edward Tufte? Know Edward Tufte? I'm a big fan of Edward Tufte, and it's how we communicate information is incredibly important. And I don't know how many of you all have seen this before or heard this, but you know that the engineers knew that there would probably be these people would die in the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. Did you all know that? Did you ever see this presentation? So Edward Tufte took their presentation that they made to their executives and showed the flaw. So these people died. This is before the launch. This is the first overhead in the presentation to the leaders of NASA. So you're on council. I show up as a former, well, whatever, say you are still or whatever, you're in an important position. I show up as a zoning administrator and tell you about planning, right? This is typically how things happen. So right out the door, what do you see in this first overhead? You see jargon. Like, what the hell is a SRM joint? And secondly, you see passive language. You see the language of the technician, not of a human at the other end of the spectrum, right? So the engineer, there's a temperature concern. I'm concerned about my hair loss. I'm not going to die. And in my world, concern is not a big deal, but in an engineer's world, concerns are a really big deal. So how we use language is critically important. So second slide, second overhead, here's some data. Well, this is meaningful. What the hell is this? More data. And look at the language. High probability of no secondary seal capability. All right. Does that seem dramatic to you? What's high? Is it 50%, 30%? I don't know what high is. What's relative about that? What's a secondary seal? You have a primary seal, right? Here's a little picture of something. I got 2 O-rings. One of them is actually doing the job here. Isn't that why we have 2 of them? More information. Much visually worse than SRM22. All right, big deal. More data. Conclusions. Development motors had putty packing, which resulted in better performance. All right, pack some putty on it. We got millions of dollars on the launch site. You guys want me to stop it? What's your deal? So people died. The executives were like, well, You guys freaked out. Could you come back and explain to us what we missed? Because it's obviously there was a miscommunication here, right? So the engineers got a second bite at the apple. They had some more time. It wasn't as much of a rush. So what did they do? They made a nice graphic. So we've got booster rockets. We've got damage. We've got temperature. And here's the information. Do you guys see the problem? You can see what's going to be the problem, right? So engineers being engineers, they assume that we all can be at the same linear thought pattern that they're in. They assume we can handle all the information that they can at a technical level. The problem is I can't. And most of us can't. I can't understand my doctor when my doctor's talking to me. Most technical people aren't proficient at communicating outside their technical bubble. So Edward Tufte's like, look, here's the deal. I don't need to know the difference between launch 1, launch 2, launch 3, booster rocket A, booster rocket B. I'm getting information that is not important to the decision. What's important is temperature and damage. So if we rearrange the launches based on temperature, here they are. The best launch is at 80 degrees. Most of the launches happen at 70 degrees. And what you see at 65 degrees, that's where the damage starts, right? See damage, 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 and you want to launch over here. So if you saw this chart presented this way, how would you make an informed decision? Would you do the launch that day? Of course not. So the information is there. We talk about this stuff when we talk about cities, but how we communicate it is critically important. Did y'all get that? Is this too depressing to start a presentation? You know, I think this is critically important because this is one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing. We get a lot of information that everybody's sitting on, and they're just like, you don't understand. It's those people, they don't understand. They're making our jobs trouble. You know, we hear this a lot from government staff. It's like, it's those citizens, they just don't understand. We hear from the citizens, the government people keep on adopting bad buildings, they don't listen to us. You know, it's just it's a miscommunication. So, I like Mingus. You know, making the simple complicated is commonplace. Making the complicated simple, awesomely simple, that takes creativity. You know, we have to be more creative about how we communicate about this stuff and how we talk about cities. So let's talk about Asheville for a second. Who's been to Asheville, North Carolina? Cool. Asheville's a neat little town. It's in western North Carolina. We're in the Smoky Mountains, Blue Ridge Parkway area. Bluegrass music's all around over there. Beer. We've got 40 breweries. We're 90,000 people. How big are y'all?
60.
60? How many breweries you got?
We don't like Lagunitas.
All right, we win. Yeah, we've got about 5,000 people per brewery. We drink a lot. And like any quirky little mountain town, we have men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that eat fire. It's your typical little place. You guys have these, right?
Yeah.
So Asheville started this way. This is the shot down Main Street. 15 years after this picture was taken, this is what it became. We like to say the 3 T's made Asheville: trains, tourism, and tuberculosis. In a way, I want you to think about this. Think about change. We have a really hard time getting new buildings in our town because everybody's like, they're like, we want to keep these buildings. This is our historic Asheville, right? And I'm like, well, let's go back to this stuff. This is their historic Asheville, right? So there was a time at which we built the city and regenerated on top of itself and grew it up. And we need to have a conversation about design. It's less about the buildings, it's less about the change, it's more about how those buildings come in at design level to make a better urban environment. That's the key conversation. But rather than talk about design, we just say, no new buildings. This is a museum that will stay this way forever. We had the second streetcar line in the entire country. Presidents came to visit, presidents still visit. During the 1920s, we were growing at 20% in population every single year through the decade. This building right here was built in 1927. It's 17 stories tall, taller than anything you guys have. We were the second largest city in North Carolina. So if y'all have heard of Charlotte, we were bigger than Charlotte. The only city that was bigger than us was Winston-Salem. In that process, we achieved the highest debt per capita of the entire United States. That's pretty cool, right? We're number one in debt. And when the Depression hit, we thought we had $5 million in the bank. It turned out we had $18,000 in the bank, so a little clerical error there. Anybody work in city finance here?
We've had that.
Yeah. So when their books were audited and the city council was indicted, 3 days after the indictment came down, the mayor committed suicide. That's how Asheville entered the Depression. We call that leadership in our town. But Thomas Wolfe, famous American author, native of Asheville, this is what he had to say about his hometown, and he wrote this in the book Lacombe Angel. Asheville has squandered fabulous sums. They've flung away the earnings of a lifetime. They've mortgaged those of a generation to come. They have ruined the city, and in doing so, they've ruined themselves, their children, and their children's children. Yeah. Now, I don't know if y'all lived in the South. Somebody's phone. They can do the walk of shame right there. You don't really say this kind of thing out loud, much less write it in the book in the South. He was threatened, his family was threatened. He stayed in New York City and taught at NYU after that. And he wrote a second book called You Can't Go Home Again, for obvious reasons. In a way, he was right. This would cause some psychic damage to our community for generations to come. It would take us until 1976 to pay off our debt. This is the newspaper. Here it is, 1976, July 9th. And check this out. I mean, it's a big deal. We've got these three guys burning the last bond, getting Miss Asheville with their tiara to hold it up. And it's a big deal when Billy Graham shows up. So here's Billy. But check this out. It's the third story in the paper. Behind abortions and somebody died in a prison fire. This is 2 counties over. This isn't even our county. We couldn't even celebrate the fact that we got out of this debt. But when we did get out of the debt, we started doing what other people did. We cut a highway through the north side of downtown, which became the Crosstown Expressway. And my favorite thing was we blew the mountain open. This is Bowcatcher Cut, we call this. I love that it's on a postcard. It's awesome. Yeah, why don't you all come over and just climb up our cut. But what's funny is the citizens actually fought DOT. They wanted to have a tunnel. And apparently DOT didn't have the technology to build a tunnel, even though some lost civilization of humanoids left us a tunnel right here. Apparently we couldn't learn from that experience. On the other side of the cut, the mall happened and our downtown died. Is this a familiar story? Yeah, we just did it a little bit later than everybody else. So these are shots of downtown Asheville. This is 1996 Chevy Celebrity. That's not too long ago. So we just had this boarded up town, just fallow. We just left all these buildings there. The one silver lining was we were too poor to knock anything down, so we actually had stuff to recycle into the future. So like a Greek choir, anytime somebody tried to fix downtown, we had a bunch of people that would say, Joe, that's not us, that's not who we are. We're mountain people, we're rural. That'll never work here, don't even try. We're not city people, we're not San Francisco, that's not who we are. Y'all have people like that? Every community I go to does. Julian Price was somebody that moved into town. Now the city took leadership, started doing streetscape projects, parking garages, stuff like that to try to get the buildings activated, and the private sector moved in. So this is one of the private individuals, this is Julian Price. He moved to Asheville with a tremendous inheritance and started putting it to work as a philanthropist, and then realized, I want to do something different with it. I want to put it at work in my own city. So he created a for-profit real estate development company called Public Interest Projects. I used to work for them. And 75% of the money goes into sticks and bricks, 25% is to seed businesses. So this was one of the businesses that we seeded, the Laughing Seed. This is the first vegetarian restaurant in Asheville. There were a couple of chefs that had a vegetarian lunch counter at the YWCA. Really good food, and they couldn't get a bank loan. Every time they went to the banks were just like, where's your pork? North Carolina's a pork state, where's your pork? And they're like, well, we're vegetarians, we don't eat meat. And they're like, okay, bye. They'll never work here. We put money behind them. They're now an anchor institution. Asheville is now one of the top 10 vegetarian cities in the entire country. It's again having faith in your own community to do something, but it's all about getting people living downtown. But you need stuff to do on the ground floor. We own a nightclub. This is the Orange Peel. It's one of the top 5 nightclubs in the entire country. Taj Mahal punched me in the back in the basement down here. That was pretty cool. So this is one of our buildings before and after. It's your typical stuff, rehab. Local business, bookstore on the ground floor here. Malaprops is an anchor institution in our community. But we also focus on communicating. So one of the things that Julian passed away in 2001, but before he died, he had his own magazine. This is what Asheville looked like. We just bricked in buildings and just left them there. And I love this quote: among cities with no particular recreation appeal, those that have preserved their past continue to enjoy tourism. Those that haven't receive almost no tourism at all. Tourism simply doesn't go to a city that's lost its soul. And it's not that we're civic boosters on tourism or that we're members of the chamber and we want hotels and stuff like that. It's just getting people to have a sense of pride about place and creating a city. Having somewhere to go, right? So, ironically enough, Frommer's Magazine lists this as number 5 place in the country to visit 15 years later. This is the same building. Last year we got listed number 1. We get 10 million tourists a year through my town. We have 75 restaurants downtown. I can't eat at all 75 restaurants. Thank you all for coming to visit my town and dropping some money, because that makes it easier for me to get more choices. I can't drink all the beer that we have. Yeah, we've got some really good beer though, by the way. We did this project. This was a mixed use project. We owned some land, about an acre of land, and so we worked with the city to build a public parking garage, and then we brought a hotel owner in to do a hotel. We're doing housing in the back, and this is going to turn into an extension of the hotel here. It was kind of funny. In working with the city, they produced this 35-page legal agreement. Now, I don't know if any of y'all, like, you were on council. I mean, you're going to read like a 35-page legal agreement in addition to all of your council agendas things. So we made a three-dimensional model of the legal agreement, just so that people would understand what's going on. That the city owns the garage. We're going to put a building over the top of it and down the backside. And then they're going to have their building over here. But all this stuff that's not green on here is paying taxes. So rather than have just a non-taxable parking garage, let's work together and find a way to get so that everybody wins. It would take us 4 years to get the city to sign on to this agreement. I'm going to tell you a little side story. One of my friends is a city planner, and she said to me, she's like, wow, Joe, that just moved right along. We got that contract signed in 4 years. And I was like, Sasha, you kind of don't want to say that to a developer, because, like, you know how many human beings my wife and I can produce in 4 years? 5. We could make 5 people. That's not fast. Like, we had to lay people off. I got laid off. Like, what are you talking about? So part of it, the private sector side, we need to understand, or the public sector side, we need to understand the cost that we put on people. If we want to drive down and afford a building, we need to also expedite the process a little bit, because the developer is just going to pass that cost onto the project. So the amount of time that we had to sit and churn through this is just driving the bill up on the thing. Incidentally, be wary of how you treat somebody. I tend to think that we're a good real estate development company, but this is how we got treated in our own magazine. As some fat cat developer with politicians on the leash. We had to take lumps. We take this personally. You know, we're trying to help our community, and this is how we get treated by our community. So just be aware of that. You know, not everybody's evil, you know? So we try to bring data to people to try to have an informed discussion about what cities are and how they work. What's going on with our city, this is the value of our downtown right here, from 1991 to 2013. These first 3 steps were just by fixing up those upper stories in the building. So all that asset value was there. Asheville, we like to say we have both kinds of people. We have hippies and rednecks, nothing in between. So Chris Peterson is one of the hardcore right-wingers, super funny guy though. These are some of his campaign flyers from the 90s. I love this. So the city's spending $26 million in garages and streetscape projects and beautification. Damn that beautification. $26 million. Anybody have $26 million in their pocket? It's a lot of money, right? So yeah, Chris is right. That's a lot of money. But let's do some math here. If you invest $26 million on a $100 million asset, and then you have a private sector return of $400 million, is investing 26 and getting back a $400 million return, is that a good return on investment?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Why do we listen to Chris? You know, why don't we just talk about this data and talk about it as a collective investment? We're just a $15 million real estate developer inside now my downtown's worth $1 billion. So I carry this book around with me. This is a book that I found in a garage sale. It's called obviously the city, the town, and the country. This is the teacher's guide. It's a 3rd grade guidebook from 1959. In kindergarten, you learn about your house. 1st grade, the school. 2nd grade, the neighborhood. 3rd grade, you learn about regional planning. You all have these conversations, right? Here's a sample of what's going on in the book. Now, I apologize. It's the 1950s. It's painfully white. It's also a little bit misogynistic. The girls were shoved out in the hallway because it was overcrowded, because I guess girls don't need an education. But you read about the overcrowding that's happening. Even more children go to school because a factory gets built. So in blue, you ask your 3rd graders, give 4 good reasons for building a new school. Right? You go on to read about Mr. Canfield. He lived next door to the Allens. He didn't want a new school. He says our taxes are too high now. If we build a new school, we need even more teachers and everything else it takes to run the school. Then we'll have to pay still higher taxes. Third grade. And you ask your third graders, why would some people have to pay higher taxes if a new school were built? Why are some people against paying higher taxes? I know adults that can't have this conversation. In the preface to this chapter, you get these things. Remember too that many children, whether urban and rural and regardless of region, are tragically limited in their knowledge of the world, and their world is largely the space in which they live and operate. I can't tell you how many council meetings you probably sat in where people were complaining about not having a parking space, or their neighbor's dog was annoying. Somehow it becomes a city problem. We are tragically limited in our understanding of what cities really are, how we're all tied together and all this stuff. And we have to address that bias. People know where they live, where they go to school, where they drop their kids off, and how to repeat the day. The details of how this all works out is incredibly complex. I love this part. While patterns vary from state to state, counties are usually responsible for education, library, health, welfare, blah, blah, blah. In studying the functions performed by your county, you will no doubt find there is a duplication of services, an overlap in jurisdictions, and a lack of coordination between the county and the local community. Do you guys feel well coordinated with Sonoma County? 1959. So if you look up the word incorporate in the Oxford American Dictionary, it says constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. There's very little difference between a real estate development company and the city of Petaluma. It's essentially my city, Asheville, is a finite boundary of land that has to be managed. We have a fixed boundary around my city that's all we have as acres. My city's worth $12.8 billion. Just in taxable value. If you want to add all the capital investments in the roads, that's another $20 billion. Does my city think that way? Does my mayor think that she's the CEO of a $36 billion real estate development company? Just at $12.8 billion, that's 6 times the value of this guy. It's about 4 times the value of Donald Trump, if you're counting. If he's telling the truth about his numbers. So if we're keeping score, we're bigger than him. So if you think about the buildings, the land, the development that's on those buildings is a product. Like a farmer looks at cropland. The farmer, when they till the soil, the farmer's not going to just go out and till the whole damn farm. The farmer's going to do an economic model about what they can grow, what the fertilizer is, the water per acre, all that stuff, to know the cash yield on the crops in the marketplace. It's just a financial decision. So here's a crop. This is our building. We converted it to housing, office, in retail. The city did the streetscape project. This is what Chris got mad about, the streetscape project. So we got a garbage can, a bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. Thank you, city, for $20,000 worth of stuff at our front door. It's a subsidy. It's true. We didn't do it. But we took this building from $300,000 of value to $11 million of value. So that the taxes on that property shot up 3,500%. That's not money we get. That's money you all in our community get, right? So now go out and buy 3,500% more garbage cans. We don't care. Is that a good return on a bump? Do y'all have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? That's a pretty good deal. And people are like, well, Joe, that's not fair. We got this Walmart over here at $20 million. That Walmart pays $200,000 in property taxes, which is a tremendous sum. This is my house. Those are my dogs. My dogs think they're lions. We're on 1/10 of an acre. We do that to freak our neighbors out, by the way. It's really cool. We'll hide behind the brick over here and just leave the dogs there. But we pay $2,000 in taxes. We're on 1/10 of an acre. So if a 1 acre cookie cutter fall from space and hit my neighborhood, this is what my neighborhood produces on a per acre basis, about $20,000 an acre in property taxes. If you take that 1 acre cookie cutter, fly it in space, drop it on the Walmart, divide it by the 34 acres it's sitting on, this is what this pays per acre. And if you had an acre of our building, this is what you get. Okay, so y'all have a farm in California, you're gonna grow something, what are you gonna grow? Get it, it's cash crop, right? So, okay, people are like, well, Joe, dude, you don't understand our cities, we run on retail taxes. So let's get rid of me, so I don't sell anything. Now, the Walmart has about $77 million worth of sales. The city gets a portion of that. So 8 cents on the sales tax dollar, we're getting 27% of that, which is a tremendous sum compared to the property taxes. You add the two of them together, this is the total take that the city gets per acre. This is just our property taxes. Well, we sell stuff on the ground floor too. Let's add that. Now you're cooking with gas, jobs per acre. We even have residential per acre at 90 units an acre versus their 0. Could you imagine if I came to your town and proposed a 90 unit an acre building? Would you guys be like celebrating me or run me out of town? You know, so we have to have a different conversation about this stuff. 90 units an acre isn't bad if it looks like that. So let's talk about the architecture. Unless y'all hate that building, I don't know. So sometimes people say to me like, dude, what's your problem? Why do you hate Walmart? And they totally miss the point. I presented at the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers Conference in Sacramento, California in 2014. Anybody been to an assessors conference?
Too excited.
I'll tell you right now, it makes a planning conference look like Burning Man. It's like, it's the squarest conference ever. It's unbelievably tough. Mathletes, these people are very serious people. Anyway, at 8 in the morning, this guy was presenting. This is Charles Terrell. Charles heads up the property tax division for Walmart. I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, and he's doing this PowerPoint presentation showing spreadsheet after spreadsheet on his buildings and how cheap they are. And he's basically saying in the microphone, our buildings are so cheap. And he's handing out business cards, like, just call me. If we're building a Walmart in your town, we'll tell you how cheap they are. We feed up our general contractors. We make the cheapest buildings possible. I'm in the back of the room going, damn, this is brilliant. He's getting 2,000 property tax bills lowered in one meeting. That's efficient. Now the citizen inside me, that's all I could hear is, I'm gonna pay the lowest taxes in your community. The average Walmart's property taxes are consumed by the average Walmart's police calls that happen. Did you all know that? Did you all do the math on this stuff? I mean, if you did, it's not a good deal. So I went up to the microphone after his presentation during Q&A and I asked him, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And before I could answer, he goes, 15 years. Our job is to get that building on a depreciation cycle, make it just drive down to nothing in 15 years, and we build a new one and we drive it down to nothing in 15 years. All right? Don't hate the player, hate the game. Good on him to explain it to us and explain where all of our loopholes are. We tend to think of incentives as I come to a community meeting and I ask for a zoning bonus and you all eat me up and then I walk out the door with my 2 extra stories, right? That's an incentive. That's a bonus. But just how we set up our tax policies, put real simply, the cheaper and crappier the building that they make, the cheaper and lower the taxes I pay. It's that simple. You can change those policies. So these are just the relentless rules of humble arithmetic. If you just do the math on this stuff, it will reveal to you a completely different city that's going on. That's the city side. We also live in the county. I'm a county member of Buncombe County. If you ever heard the term, you don't know Bunk, this is where it came from. We have a wonderful relationship with our county. Our county brothers and sisters took away our airport, our water system, got a special law passed on us not having the ability to annex land, and they didn't pay us a red cent for the airport or the water system. And then our state legislator called us a cesspool of sin. It's a wonderful relationship. But there are 2 voters out in the county for every 1 voter inside the city, so they tend to dominate us politically. We like to show that we actually pay more county taxes than somebody out in the county. So how about a thank you card? I'm just giving you money. Here's the mall. At $8,000 an acre of county taxes versus our city building. And let's not stop there, let's bring downtown into it. So here's our building at $250,000 an acre in county taxes versus the mall. So what you see is what's good for downtown is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the county. This is more true here in California because your county gets even more of that property tax. So really you all need to have a conversation about your county working with you all about your downtown as well, because it produces wealth for them. You're in it together. I want you to realize this isn't complex math that I'm doing here. It's 5th grade division. I don't have I'm not an accountant. I don't have a math degree. It's just doing the math on projects. It's called productivity. We do productivity analysis when we talk about cars, right? We don't talk about cars on a miles per tank basis, do we? If we did, we'd all be driving Ford F-150s to 650 miles per tank. You'd say, Joe, that's stupid. All the tanks are different sizes. It's the gallon. You say miles per gallon. The numbers change. We should all be driving BMW Asettas. Sorry to you Prius owners. You see what I'm saying? It's productivity. It's a gallon of gas. It's like, what, a $3 or $4 commodity? Why aren't you doing this for a $40,000 commodity called land? So we've done this all across the country. We've done it in Canada. We've done it in New Zealand. When you mash it up, for every dollar of county taxes somebody out in the county is paying to the county per acre, a city resident's paying about 5 times that. The Walmart's about $7, the mall's about 9. As soon as you get to a 2-story building, this could be in Windsor, Driggs, Idaho, Durham, North Carolina, doesn't matter. As soon as you start stacking stories, you're stacking dollar bills. And it's not a proportional growth, it's an exponential growth. And this isn't to say that everybody needs to live in a downtown, it's just be aware of where the money's coming from. So, the more I do this, the more people say to me, this is way too simple. Why aren't people doing this? Why aren't we having this as part of our common conversations about cities? And I tell people, I'm like, this is just a paradigm shift. It takes a while for this kind of stuff to sink in. So in 1972, a pilot took out a patent to put wheels on luggage. Some of us might remember a time before wheels on luggage. Not dating anybody on that, but remember the O.J. Simpson commercial? He's running through the airport carrying luggage, no wheels there. The patent expired in 1991, so we all got wheels on luggage. We actually put a man on the moon before we put wheels on luggage. Did you not know what a wheel was? Sometimes change takes a while. So this work that we do actually goes back to the 1960s. For those of you that read Ian McCart's book, Design with Nature, he nails it. He says money is our measure. He's trying to get us to actually not destroy the planet, and he's telling us, giving us the golden ticket, saying use money to talk about it. He's right. So I can map your brain. I can show you what's going on inside your brain. Can I map your economics in your city? So we'll take the city. This is moving the city aside. We use GIS technology to show stuff, so I can show you your infrastructure, the buildings that are built on the infrastructure, your ologies, your hydrology, your geology, right? We can split nature and the man-made, and I can also show you your economics. I can show you how policy affects your pocketbook. So for you guys in California, this is Sonoma County. This is like the miles per tank version. This is typically how we talk about real estate in total value. So if one of these vineyard people out here were to come to a commission meeting or a council meeting, they'd be seen in high regard because they're very valuable properties. Gray is non-taxable, so you see the parks in kind of gray area. They're not paying taxes, they have no value. As the hotter the color, the higher the value. So the purple stuff is over 13 million. But that's total value, that's like miles per tank. If we say value per acre, the map changes. Now all of a sudden we can understand where our cities are and we can understand the economic potency of our cities. I'll show it to you in 3D. So you can see what's happening from an economic standpoint in the different places. Y'all are doing actually pretty good. You're clustered in here pretty tight. You don't have the peaks that, let's say, Sonoma has. So they're pulling a higher value, so is Healdsburg. That's that, what is that, like a 4-story hotel?
Yeah.
It's killing it right there. But again, it's just being aware of that. You're doing better than Roanoke Park, I'll say that. Which doesn't take much, I'll say that. Sorry. They got a billboard. So we were asked to do a deeper dive in Sonoma. Sonoma is about $18.3 billion of taxable value. So the mayor's CEO of an $18 billion corporation. You can see the value of downtown, but this was kind of interesting. That's the historic Railroad Square District. And you can see what the highway's done, just kind of like split it like a goalpost, right? But that's doing all right. So even in those little buildings that are about 4 stories tall, that's pretty potent. So just to run through some examples, the Walmart's about $800,000 of value per acre. A new Walmart's about $1.4 million. So this will eventually depreciate down to that, if not lower. Give it a couple years. I'll go ahead and leave the Walmart on here as a control subject. Everybody's got one, so there it is. Here's the Costco. The Target's about $1.8 million. This is interesting. Here's the Plaza Mall at about $4.3 million an acre, which is pretty good, right? Until you look at other buildings. This is just around the corner. This is actually more tax potent from a property tax standpoint at $4.7 million versus the 4.3. This guy, which is just across the street from this, is $8.5 million an acre. And this, which is nothing to write home about architecturally, sorry, is about $11 million of value per acre. So you can see how this stuff produces wealth in your community at different relative abilities. Keysight and Medtronics, these are office campuses, sizable properties, 1.5 million and 1.6 million. But just to look at that relative to, let's say, the McDonald's at Windsor. That's actually more tax potent than these two things. And again, it's a trade-off. If you want to have an office campus environment, realize how much of the farm you're going to take to do that. Is it worth it to go through that? Are you indeed giving it a subsidy by letting them squander that land and not pay for all the infrastructure? Do y'all get that?
Yes.
You're not all Medtronics employees, are you? Okay. The infill buildings, now we're talking 17 million for that an acre, 17 million for that, and it's super potent. This was kind of interesting. This is subsidized housing. This is all assisted living. It's pulling $26 million of value per acre out of that thing. Who would have thought? And then this is, I think this is like offers social services housing complex at 8 million. Right next to that building is this thing. This is the most potent building in the entire county at 28 million an acre. So you can see the values right there of what's going on. So there's also what happens with your history. Most of this stuff is wiped out, but what they did keep is doing all right. This is an empty building at about $4 million of value per acre. This is almost as property tax potent as the mall, and it's empty. So it's only north from there. It's only going to go more valuable from there. And then the Hotel La Rose, this is about 13.5 million an acre for this, and it was built in 1907. So think of that as a portfolio piece that will continue giving wealth for hundreds of years. That's a pretty good thing. Talk about your buildings that way. We want to leave a legacy for our great-grandkids. How do we do that? Am I getting too nerdy for you all? This got kind of quiet.
Good.
It's good?
Yeah.
Retail taxes, your cities tend to run off retail taxes. This is how the retail taxes look in Santa Rosa if you're just to look at those numbers. So we see the Plaza Mall, Santa Rosa Marketplace, Coddington Mall, Railroad District, and the historic core downtown. So by all intent and purposes, you're like, wow, this is the winner, right? But this thing is so massive as far as a tract of land, so when you equalize it at a per acre basis, this is what the numbers look like. Would y'all have thought that the Railroad Square District is actually almost as productive as Santa Rosa Marketplace? But it is. Those are the numbers, they don't lie. Let's kind of flip through this. So we see this in other places. This is Austin, Texas. You see the downtown destroying the mall zone. This is Syracuse, New York. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Syracuse, New York, but there's nothing really to write home about with their downtown. This is, I grew up around there too. This is a 6-story mall right here called Destiny Mall. It's like the Mall of America for the Northeast. All these Canadians come down there and shop. And when we showed them this model, somebody that was on the board of directors for the Downtown Association said to me, he goes, that can't be right. My daughter shops at the mall. She drops $200 a month. And I was like, okay, whatever. How often is she there? He's like, every weekend. 8 times a month. All right, cool, got it. You ate lunch downtown. What did you spend? He said $12. I said, multiply that times 20. And he's like, damn it. Like, just remove your biases for a second, because you're at the mall all the times when your daughter's there, so is everybody else in town, but they're not there on Tuesday and Wednesday and during the day. You just let the numbers do the talking, equalize it so it's apples to apples, and make an informed decision. Even Nashville. So 1.9 acres of this stuff would equal the 22 acre of that stuff in property taxes. 0.4, less than half an acre of that would equal the 13 acre this in property taxes. 1.4 acres of that, which you wouldn't even have noticed if you drove through Santa Rosa, equals the 13 acres this. And here closer to home, a 1923 building, which you still have, 1.2 acres of that would equal the 15 acre outlet mall. Will the outlet mall be here 50 years from now? No. So just be aware of that, and be aware of the trade-off when you make that decision. So they asked, okay, Joe, well, that's fine. These are all great numbers. How do you use it? We did a project in Australia where we took, they wanted to take a highway that was cutting through town, and they wanted to find space back. So it's close to the downtown. They want to grow the area up. It's on a transit line or near a transit line. So basically they want to reclaim the right-of-way that ripped through a community and rebuild it. So this is the new buildings here. So basically this is all right-of-way right now. They're looking for ways to make more wealth in their community. We did the tax model, and in blue is the new wealth that they get in a marketplace that's already just sitting there. not giving them anything. So they'll actually harvest $80 million in new taxes if they did this redevelopment. So they're like, well, that makes sense, let's do it. You know, are you guys looking for opportunities like that? In places that are more, the reason why I asked to look for other examples, there are people that are in more desperate need than you are, and they're finding creative solutions like this. Chattanooga, they're not so desperate, but they're doing some interesting things. We did their downtown. This is this, like their version of Brooklyn across the river over here. That's where all the hipsters live, and they bicycle across this bridge. This developer came from Atlanta. He's like, I want to do this grocery store. It's called a Publix grocery store, which is like a sub-regional chain of the Southeast, kind of like a Safeway. So he's like, Publix wants a grocery store, and we're going to go ahead and make a big surface parking lot. Now they had urban design guidelines for the site, so they're asking to just waive those. And so our people were asking, like, can you put a number on that? What are we giving away if we do that? So here's the site. We've got mixed-use buildings that already happened. We're not grabbing them from San Francisco or something. This is an urban-style grocery store. It's kind of like a Whole Foods called Green Life. And then you've got townhouses. So we have the ingredients of urban design there. This is what a suburban Publix looks like. These are in their marketplace. We can put a comp on those. And then here's their mixed-use buildings. Office above retail, residential above retail. They're just around the corner. This is the urban grocer that the local guy did. There's like yoga studios up here and like dog beauty salons down here, and then there's that thing in the back. Publix has done some crazy stuff before. This is a building built in 1998. There's parking on the roof. The grocery store is under it. It looks like a UFO hit it, but it's a conveyor belt to get you to your car. 1998. So Publix has done this before. This is a small footprint Publix with two faces. It's called a hybrid model. So a small footprint store, surface parking lots, you have your conventional grocery store, you have your pedestrian face. So here's the site, 34-foot of grade change. The developer is literally cutting into the hill. And so we wanted to show them. We just made this really crude Google SketchUp model. Sorry to you landscape architects in the room. This is like probably gonna hurt you to see this because I don't know how to do a topo all that well, so it's pretty rough over here. But I just wanted people to see that these houses now get to look at a tarmac of a roof, and here's your quarter-mile long future graffiti wall right here. But we're running the taxes, and I'll come back to that. So let's just try another option. Urban Design 101, meet the minimum code requirements. Townhouses facing housing, a couple of corner mixed-use buildings. Here's what you get. So that bare minimum. Do what the local guy did, Green Life model. Ring the site, big parking lot in the center. This is what you get. Go crazy, do Miami Beach. You've got 34-foot of grade change, just drive it up on the roof and densify the heck out of it. This is what you get. Back it down to West Palm Beach, small footprint. This is what you get. And then you irritate the developer. The developer goes back to Atlanta. You don't get a grocery store. What was us? You just get what's already happening in the neighborhood. Townhouses and mixed-use buildings. This is what you get. Okay, so let's recap. It is indeed true that the developers and the mayor is saying, we're going to get 3 times the taxes off what's currently here. But if you just followed your zoning code and your goals and your aspirations and did the most minimum requirement, you'd get this on an annual basis. If you did a better site design, this is what you get. If you go crazy and do Miami Beach, this is what you get. Back it down to West Palm Beach or your no-build scenario. So when we do development as a developer, what I'm doing is an opportunity cost model to know what all my options are and what I can afford and how to make my business model work. So if we're in this cooperative development together with I'm asking you, the city, for something, what does it mean for you? How can you participate in this? How can you get your wealth as well? Or how can we both win together? So we said, all right, let's just take 2 of these and compare them. Let's do this mid-range, what the local guy did. Here's the difference, physically and financially. And hey, the county's getting better out of this too, so why don't we get the county at the table? But you can just look at these. When you look at the numbers, it's probably not fair to me to show you the annual take, because when you're stuck with this, you're stuck with it for decades. As you look at your budget today, realize you've got 20, 30, 40 years worth of decisions that happen just like this that are driving you broke today, where you didn't get enough revenue out of those properties to pay for the streets that adjacent to it. We don't charge people for the infrastructure. We charge them based on value. So 20 years, this is what the numbers look like. So in 20 years, you've made $600,000 of new money, but you've foregone millions. You could reach in your pocket today and hand them $2 million out of your general fund. And just say, just here's $2 million for the brain damage. Could you just make it happen? You'll still be ahead of the game, $2.2 million. Is this boring or weird?
From where?
What's that?
From where?
Taxes. So okay, let me walk through it. So this is the annual taxes, property taxes, right? For each site. 44,000, 45,000 versus 253. So you multiply it times 20 over 20 years. These are the annual taxes over 20 years as one big payment, right? So if you give $2 million out of your budget, that means you're not getting $2 million out of that project. And sometimes people call that tax increment financing, or there's other words. You all used to have redevelopment authorities and things like that. But this is how you participate in the project. But even with that, even if you lost $2 million here, it's still above $2.2 million versus what they're getting if you let them underbuild on the site. Does that make sense? So you all have a train coming. We were asked to look at the train stations, see what's going around the station areas. We got some models of stuff in the basically the walk shed around Santa Rosa in here. And what would happen if you build buildings. We're also going to do Windsor tomorrow. So they gave us some designs of what's going on near the train station in both areas. Here's Santa Rosa again. And there's a redevelopment site. So we just grabbed did an average downtown building mixed use stuff and historic railroad square. I won't go too far into the numbers on this stuff, but we basically use this stuff as comps. It's already happened here. You know it works. These are probably at the low end of value. So these are all the different comps that we pulled. This is the average, about $175 a square foot of value. We think it'd probably be somewhere around $200 a square foot because it's going to be in more of a prime location. Probably also a better built building too. But again, look at that as a financial situation and are they going to get a return on that? So current tax values, this is at 40 units an acre, which is the minimum zoning requirement. This is at 25 units an acre. And this is kind of where it probably should be at 60 units an acre. And I realized that building that we did that retrofit on was 90 units an acre, so this is below that, and that was a 6-story building. They have these drawings, and I was talking to Mitch about this today. These are the proposed drawings for around the train station, which are kind of interesting. But to think of a train line around here and only having like a 3 or 4-story building seems like a wasted opportunity, particularly when you have a housing crisis. But again, that's your decision to make. But those buildings are somewhere into there in value. Now the taxes gained out of it would be this on an annual basis. So they'll be harvesting between $300,000 and $400,000 just on that one property of new taxes that's currently paying nothing. Over 25 years, this is what it looks like. So you have this opportunity. Most people would kill to have a train station going through them with that kind of capital investment. So how do you think about harvesting that opportunity for future generations and think about capitalizing on that massive investment? So that was just this one site. Now looking at this site here, which is still in the walk shed, different types of buildings. So the current conditions is currently valued at about $4 million. This is a low-rise hotel. This is a low-rise hotel with student housing. This is a so you're basically swapping out hotel units for housing units, so it drops in value. This is a high-rise with no student housing, and high-rise with hotel, no student housing. So those are the values. What's interesting is this one building right here would be paying 57% of the current downtown production property taxes. So in one building, they will increase their downtown's property tax production by 157%. That's the opportunity that they have if they want to move on that. So here's currently the high watermark of the city. This is the top value of the city. So that building will be more valuable because of its location and construction in the area, which produces more wealth. So we made cool, nerdy models and showed those two sites and how they'll grow up. With the different opportunities, and here they are side by side at a moderate level and at a future level, and how they'll fit into the whole. They're going to be sizable gains to the community. So just to close, if you're not measuring this stuff, you can't manage it. You don't really have an idea of how to capitalize on it if you're not taking its measurements. Sometimes people ask me, like, Joe, this is fine, that's all tax production, but what about cost? We actually got that opportunity in Lafayette, Louisiana. They're going broke, and they asked us to look at their data. People in Lafayette, Louisiana are really funny people, by the way. So we did their revenue model, just taking the roads that they own. You all own roads, everybody owns roads. How many square miles of roads do y'all have? Do you know? So in Lafayette, we took all of their roads. It's asphalt. It's just basically a massive parking lot. They have to rebuild their roads every 40 years because they're built on rubbery soil. It shakes apart. This is how much 6.5 square miles looks. It'll span from Long Island to Manhattan to New Jersey, filling all of New York Bay. And that's what they own. So every 40 years, they have to rebuild that. 12 times the French Quarter. So this is what it looks like in a financial way. In red is the obligated burden to replace all those roads. In blue is the cash that they have to pay for it. Let me ask you a really complex financial problem. Do you have enough blue to pay for the red? No. So in addition to it being 18 times the size of your revenue, your cost, half of your revenue is already committed to the bonds on your debt service on the red. You won't even see that. That goes straight to the bonding companies before it comes to your coffers. Do you guys talk to your city about this stuff to understand your obligated debt burden and all of your infrastructure? Would you do it after this meeting? Yeah. So I made the mistake of presenting this to their elected officials, and this is how I was treated by this guy. I love this statement. It's not about where you live, it's about what you believe. He accused me of, I'm gonna raise everybody's taxes, I'm gonna kill his dog, kick his grandmother out of his house. It's just kind of funny the way that people talk about cities. I'm like, look, you gotta do math on this stuff. The public works director was so incensed by this statement, he returned to Salvi by saying, there's no such thing as an infrastructure fairy. We're gonna Photoshop Kevin in on that one, he's awesome. He calls himself the world's greatest public works director, by the way. So this is what their city looks like. We sent everybody a bill. This is the side view of the city. In green you have the revenue, in red you have the cost. This is what you're running. I don't care what you're doing or how you think your city operates, this is the cash flow of your city. When you net your costs against your revenue, this is what it looks like. So what's in the black, what's in the red, you take this whole thing and this is what it looks like. So they call their counties parishes down there. I said, it looks like the parish is bleeding. You take this whole thing and slap it down on the floor so everything pops up vertically, this is what you get. So all those people that live out here, that told, and even the realtors told me, they said, well, that's where people want to live. There's a market demand to move out there. I said, well, hell yeah, it looks like you're paying them to move there. This is all the money that they're not paying to live there and here. While these people are producing wealth and covering their debts. Just build more green stuff, because you're going broke. Do you guys think this through or do this stuff? I mean, what's crazy is, it's kind of simple. In 1950, they had 34,000 people, 5 feet of pipe per person, 2.4 fire hydrants per thousand. They've grown their community. They've grown their community to 121,000 people. They've grown their pipe to 50 feet of pipe per person and 51 fire hydrants per thousand people. Like, were people dying in the streets and starving of water scarcity in the 1950s or something? Like, what's up with that? So they've increased their population 350%, they've increased their liability 1,000 and 2,000%. This is what's happened in every American city for the past 40 years. And they told me, like, Joe, look, we got oil money out of the Gulf, we got lots of money out of that Gulf, we're oil rich, all right, cool. They've increased their household income from 28,000 adjusted for today's dollars to 45,000, but that's only been a 160% increase. So they've got 160%, let's just call it 200% increase in wealth. They've got thousands of percent increase in liability. So this is like me getting a $5,000 a year raise at my job and convincing my wife into building a 20,000 square foot addition on my house. It just doesn't pencil out. So the time has come due where we have to pay for this stuff, and we have to understand the cost of this in the city and how it works. We need to be more literate about our tax system. Ironically enough, we were formed on a tax revolt. We need to know this stuff. Don't let your policies harm you. So my city's worth more than all of your professional sports teams combined. Santa Rosa is about, 33 Clippers. Sonoma County is about 131 Clippers. Warriors, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a massive faux pas. And I like Steph Curry too. So, I can tell you that, what's his name that owns the, Peter Gruber. He probably knows Steph Curry's power bill. I can tell you the cups in our nightclub cost 5 cents a pop. Can you tell me how much a street costs? So you could probably tell me Steph Curry's shooting percentages at different points of the arc. So we need to understand this and be literate about our cities and do the math. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Stephani, and I am one of a handful of folks who have come together and we're calling ourselves Urban Community Partnership. Here tonight we have Mitch Connor, David Petras, Dave Alden, Scott Johnson was here, he had to go. Am I missing anything? Okay, great. So as you can see, we're a very diverse cross-section of different organizations and people from different kinds of backgrounds that have come together to basically start working on the implementation pieces that need to happen in order to avoid some of the pitfalls that Joe talked about. We're interested in transformational development, and we are interested in that because we know that it's not just a loss in revenue to the cities, but it's also a loss in housing, a loss in downtown urban environments that are livable, walkable, places that we want to be. There's a loss in economic activity, and those cause, all of those things together cause an increase in rental pressure and an increase in the carbon footprint. And we've gone and seen Joe present at conferences across the country, and we started doing the math in our community and got concerned. And so we kind of came together and said, what are we going to do about this? We brought Joe to do a small group session about a year ago, and then we did the Santa Rosa pilot in January. And what we learned was that we follow the same pattern that Joe talked about that's throughout the country, where our downtown core, the image of Santa Rosa, is where the wealth is generated in our community as well. And then also we know that the infrastructure costs in Santa Rosa in particular are averaging about $13 million annually in unfunded infrastructure costs. So we have this same problem where we're bleeding out the same way that Lafayette is. We also know that there's a housing crisis here in Sonoma County. And these are units that are approved but not built, and we started thinking about what we could do to help solve that problem. And so we've been coming up with different ideas about workshopping with owners, property owners, to try to see which of those projects make sense for the downtown core. We're focused on the downtown core and around the smart station because we also recognize that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do appropriate development in and around those train stations. And we're not seeing it yet. So there's a lost opportunity here that we're letting time go by, and we're not getting ready for that train. We aren't smart ready yet. These are projects that could have been, and this is what we've continually seen slip by us. Opportunity to build high-rises or build mid-rise buildings that produce all of that wealth that we need in our downtown. For those of you who don't know, that's the Museum on the Square building that is recently renovated, and it's actually kind of a success story, but they ended up lopping off all the housing, the top 5-6 floors there. So what we got was just the office portion and the retail portion of that, but it's still a success. It's just not what it could have been. Not quite transformational, really. So we also know that since 2013, 70% of the housing that has been built in Sonoma County has been multifamily. And we want those people to go here because we did the math, and we don't want the situation where we're losing money, revenue by building out. And we also know that that's not a good model for Sonoma County as well. So we started to try to overlay some of the other efforts in the county. One of the ones that we looked at was the Portrait of Sonoma, which is taking a look at how location affects your life expectancy, your educational outcome, your access to healthcare, and to having an active lifestyle. And that's the downtown Petaluma location. And so we wanted to try to connect the dots between the wealth that's being generated in downtown Petaluma or downtown Santa Rosa. You guys are actually doing much better than downtown Santa Rosa on your human health index, by the way, but and take that revenue and see what we can do to plug it back into the communities that are seeing that kind of, social injustice. So we also have been trying to overlay some of the other data points that are out there, and there's lots of data that talks about place-based interventions and what we need to do when we're looking at planning to try to make the most of the opportunity that we have, which in our case is land in and around the TODs, the transit-oriented development. So one of the sponsors you might have noticed was Sonoma County Transit Authority, and we're working with them to try to understand what their rollout is over the next couple of years, connect those dots, see how what we're doing connects in with the Climate Action 2020, and then again, the health action piece, which is the place-based interventions. Oops. Did it. Joe's my IT guy, isn't that fabulous? So, additionally, we realize that there's a relationship between the cities, and we know this from talks that we've heard about economic development and also about this first and last mile. You're not going to get on the train in Santa Rosa and get off the train in Santa Rosa. You're going to go to Petaluma, you're going to go to Windsor, you're going to go to Santa Fe, you're going to get off. So we need to start connecting the dots between the train stations and making that first and last mile attractive so that we can get people on the train and affect these numbers down here, the biking and the walking numbers that we've set goals, each of the cities have set goals, the county set goals, and we're really not even reaching those at all. We're doing nothing to reach those right now, other than the smart train. We also are a big proponent of Measure Kaye coming up, and this is Petaluma, and you can see the green, these are your community separators. And we've been working with Greenbelt Alliance to bring their endorsement, their project endorsement protocol that they have in the South Bay up to the North Bay. And that way we can show that the community is rowing together on some of these development projects and that the development community and the environmental community are aligned. On-road transportation, 52% in Sonoma County of our carbon footprint. So what can we do? What can we do with development to try to reduce this number? And then again, and also with the building, the energy costs of the building. So in order to build buildings that are quality buildings, we need to be thinking about additional stories to do that. Where we're at right now in Sonoma County is this weird 4-story kind of, that's about as high as we think we can go. Well, that's a weird building type. It doesn't really, it starts to get complicated. So we need to add stories in order to make those projects pencil out. And that's partly why that 800 units haven't been built in Petaluma that have been approved, because they didn't pencil out when we started actually figuring out what the construction costs of those are going to be. So we're looking at a whole palette of implementation ideas. Starting working with the city of Santa Rosa to pilot and to kind of explore some of these ideas, and Windsor to work on some of their general plan and some of their other barriers to the kind of development that we're talking about. And then making sure that we're educating the community about the collective impact, the health benefits, what the local vision really is for these downtown areas, and other things that relate to Climate Action 2020. So again, tying that stuff all together and making sure that we're understanding what the different efforts are so we're not duplicating and we're leveraging. So what you can do for the community at this point is to think about the things that Joe said tonight and start asking questions and start educating yourselves about the situation that we're in here in Sonoma County, and join us. Join our group. We have a website, which is urbancommunitypartnership.org. And we are going to be using that website to build a platform for essentially our YIMBY movement, which is our Yes in My Backyard movement. And so that's how we'll be connecting with the community on this. And we're also looking to build a broad base as far as who's investing in this work, so that it's not just coming from the municipality, it's not just coming from the development community, but it's coming from the community at large. So we really need kind of an all hands on deck on this, and we need you to participate and join in. At the very minimum, you know, being a YIMBY and supporting projects that are in your community that you believe in, actually showing up and supporting those projects is what we really need. So thank you very much.